How's it going, everybody? It's your host, Moose. It's episode 6 of the Thunderdome Puckcast. Let's hit that intro. Hope you're having a great evening here from the $10 Sports Man Cave. It's episode 6 of the Thunderdome Puckcast, our weekly, almost, lightning show. Try to group the games together, whether it's a road trip or a home stand like we had today. We'll be talking about our last 3 games. Kind of a brief homestand at Amalie Arena before the Bolts once again head off on the road for another 2.5 weeks with trip up to New York, playing all the New York teams all at once, and then over to Sweden to play the 4th New York team, our division rival Buffalo Sabres, who are currently leading the Atlantic Division. So it'll be a tough 2 games over in Sweden before they come back to play the Rangers again back at Amalie Arena. So again, good evening. It's your host Moose. We'll do our usual. We'll be checking in on every division, every show. Last episode we did the Metropolitan. We'll do Central today, and then we'll do the Pacific during our next episode, episode 7. Want to go through the homestand, and it was truly a tale of 3 games, maybe 2 games, because I think we played decently well in the Colorado game, and the wheels just came flying off at one point with some questionable coaching decisions, and we'll kind of get into that. Our third item for today, of course, is the struggle is real. We're really struggling on the penalty kill, and as we're getting into year 7, year 8 of the John Cooper era, what's going on with the coaching? Is the coaching a factor? Are we underperforming because of the coaching? Can we ever get to the next level despite Cooper leading us to the Stanley Cup final against the Hawks a few years back, and consistently getting into the Eastern Conference Finals, even against the Penguins, and of course those Washington Capitals a few years back. And then we'll close it out with a look at the road ahead. A little bit of a tricky path for the Lightning for the next 2 weeks, but we'll keep that all in perspective. So let's take a look at the Central Division. That usually involves taking a look at the current standings, as well as how some of the top offensive and defensive and goaltending players are doing for the Central Division. Kind of compare them to some of the other divisions and the NHL as well. So really the big story out in the Central Division right now is, at least an eighth through the season, it's the Colorado Avalanche with consistent and top-notch play. At the beginning of the Lightning homestand, 2 games, well, I guess now 3 games ago, Avalanche actually were coming in undefeated, and they left undefeated, defeating the Lightning 6-2. They've been, I don't know if you want to say they're a surprise. I definitely would have pegged them for a playoff team, but out to a strong start, leading the division, getting great goaltending from Philip Grubauer and their backup goalie, who we'll kind of get into it in a moment. It seems like the Lightning seem to run into backup goalies who play like Vezina candidates every time. Their backup goalie having a 44 save performance, part of the reason why Colorado was able to escape with a win. Pittsburgh, kind of an interesting matchup over in the Metropolitan Division, and we'll finish up with Nashville, of course. But looking at the Central Division, we'll pull up the standings right now. And really, this is really maybe the only surprise. I don't know if I expected to see Minnesota dead last. Other than the Lightning, they've played the most games away from home as well, and they're underperforming in terms of goal scoring. Dubnik's having a little bit of a down year as well. I expected a little bit better from Chicago. They kind of made a push towards the end of the year last year to almost make the playoffs. So they're still struggling. 8 points, kind of on the lower end of the league right now. And a little surprise from Dallas as well with Ben Bishop. Statistically not struggling, but the Stars are just not scoring goals. They have one of the largest differentials in the negative in the league. Kind of Minnesota's problem as well. A big -7 spot or a -11 spot for the Dallas Stars in goal differential. Not really surprised with the top four, however, uh, give or take. Maybe Winnipeg, we anticipated a little bit of a down year. St. Louis, we knew would be competing. Though the injury to Tarasenko is going to be big. He's out for 5 months. Maybe they get him back for a playoff run. And Nashville's off to a strong start as well. The ageless wonder Pekka Rinne keeping it going and again having just a great season so far. So that's where what your standings look like out in the Central Division. Again, Colorado, Nashville, and St. Louis all within 2 points of each other. I think it's going to be no, it's a little early to tell in forecast, but I'd expect those three teams to be locks for the playoffs. We'd have to look over at the Pacific Division to see if we are going to get 1 or 2 or 0 wildcard teams from the Western Division. I'd expect likely Winnipeg to be in the mix there as we get into the end of the year in the next 6 months or 5 months now, right? So let's look at some statistics for our teams over in the Central Conference. And the big point leader, again, not a surprise, Nathan MacKinnon, 15 points leading the division. A little bit of a surprise, Braden Shen playing extremely well for the Blues, 9-4 for your 13 points. But again, it's the big D-man, Roman Josi, maybe might win the Norris this year so far. 5-6, 13 points. I believe he's leading all defensemen. We'll run the stats for defensemen here in a moment. But 5-6, just signing a big 7-year or 8-year deal, I think, for $72 million. About a 10 million annual cap AAV for the next 7 years. He's 31, so I'm hoping that's a front-loaded deal for the Predators, and hopefully, I think what I saw was a no trade or no movement clause, which historically is something Nashville doesn't do for their players. So, Romeo, I think, is top 6 defenseman in the league. Certainly deserving the money, but again, I'm hoping it's front-loaded and we're not expecting a 38-year-old Roman Josi in the next 7 years to be still a top-pairing defenseman for the Predators. Overall, great move. I think it'll be interesting what cap space looks like. I mean, I'd imagine Pekka Rinne is going to retire in the next 2 to 3 years. Don't quote me on that. We saw how long Roberto Luongo stuck around. So that may clear up some cap space there. But they do have some young stars coming up as well. A little bit surprised about Scheifele. 4-9 there. And Line, I think, was the big kind of head scratcher. He's doing great in the assist column, but he was among the leaders in goals last year. I think he's 3-10 right now. 3-10 for 13 points, so it's really killing it with assists. But kind of a down year so far for goals for Patrick Laine. I forgot Matt Duchene was over in Nashville after being a rental basically for the Columbus Blue Jackets in their brief playoff run. And of course, Ryan O'Reilly, always a solid presence for the Blues. Almost had the Cardinals there for the Blues. Let's look at goals. I think, it's Braden Shen leading the Central. I had heard about Rupe's Hintz up and coming for the Dallas Stars. I know they had been waiting a little bit for him to get into the action. So he's actually up at 6 goals, kind of a 3-way tie for second with David Perron and Nate McKinnon. And that's right, Nazem Kadri a little bit behind the success over in Colorado, making the move. Was he a trade? Or was he I think he might have been a trade. Don't know if it was a trade deadline deal. I think it was over summer or draft. But Kadri coming over from the Leafs. So kind of a look at what your stats look like for the Central. Let's take a look at our goalies. Got the all skaters. I don't think you'd be surprised that Pekka Rinne is leading some of the most of the stats on the goaltending side, and we talked about uh, Philip Grubauer and Jordan Binnington really leading the ship there. Under 2 GAA for Rinne. Again, not a surprise. Usually among the leaders there and among the leaders in save percentage as well. Looking at Devin Dubnyk, under a 90% save percentage. He's definitely struggling a little bit. Not that Minnesota's playing well defensively, but he is going through a little bit of a slump to begin the year. And this is Pavel Francouz, is who we're talking about. We'll talk about right now as we transition into the Lightning homestand. So yes, Pavel Francouz, what a performance against the Lightning. I think it might have been his first start of the year, if not his second. 44 save performance in goal. 6-2 final. Colorado coming out on top. And overall, that it was a game I watched most of it. I think when stuff started getting out of hand, I kind of jumped away from it and was monitoring it. But the Lightning looked great for the most part. Lots of pressure and moderate to high degree of difficulty shots. These weren't just peppering the goalie. These were making him work, and honestly, true domination for minutes at a time in the offensive zone. Really very little pressure, especially in the first period from Colorado, but it just really took a flurry of 3 goals in 3.5 minutes. And, Vasi actually looked shaky for the most part. Kind of vice versa, right? He's usually the one carrying the team, and we're able to sacrifice a few extra shots a game on average because we have Vasi in net, right? But it was more so flipped. The scenario was flipped this time where he was really struggling. It was up to us to keep the puck out of our defensive zone to really help him with his struggles. Again, he gave up 6 goals. I think they had maybe 25 shots. We got the stats right here on the other screen. 24 shots, 6 out of 24, 75% essentially for Vasi. A tough night for him. And then again, Francouz with a 44 save performance. But really, as we switch back over to the stat screen, this was really the period here. Second period, you had Jost with his hat trick, first hat trick with the Avalanche. 2 of those goals coming in the second period. He completed it on the 4th goal for the Avalanche. But you see less than a 3-minute span where 3 goals were scored in quick succession. The Lightning, I think, for those maybe 5 or 7 minutes, looked lost on defense. It was just bad breakdowns, bad line changes, bad mistakes leading to these goals. And I think we've talked about the struggles with the penalty kill, and actually Lightning went perfect on the penalty kill. Only 2 penalties committed, and Colorado went 0-2 in the PK, or on the PP, so we were very lucky. We didn't give up the PK goals like we have been doing. This has all been 5-on-5 play, and it was just that brief 5 to 7 minute period where there was just mistakes and bad line changes, and honestly soft goals from Vasi that really turned the game. And I think we'll talk about coaching a little bit. Is Cooper didn't do anything, didn't call a timeout to try and slow down the game, didn't shake things up and get Curtis McElhinney in there. You don't want to pull the horse you rode in on. Make a public spectacle. I think Vasi's been been pulled the fewest in the past few years. When you're looking at starting goalies, and you don't want to discourage your youngster, but I think coming out in the third period might have sent a message with Curtis in net, but nothing really was done. It was very passive by Cooper. I didn't see any passion on the bench. No, get your head out of your asses kind of talk or anything. It was just very like, oh wow, shell shocked, almost like he was surprised as well. So that really was a turning point in the game. Really, no chance after that. Victor getting on the board in the third period, but really it was just a tough night for Vasi. If you look at that highlight package, again, good night on the PK for us. No goals for us on the penalty kill. Kind of a physical game here of 18 penalty minutes. I think there was a fight in there or two for the side. So kind of an oddity with teams in different conferences really getting under their skin. Again, physical night, Lightning leading in hits, which is what I like to see. It's something that we didn't used to lead in before. As much as we criticized Witkowski for some bonehead penalties, I love the dynamic the fourth line brings us. And even with Seti back, Seti Paquette rotating in there, just makes me excited that we have at least a little bit of pressure and can force a little bit of enforcer accountability on there with Maroon, Seti, and of course Luke Witkowski. It's kind of a tough game there. Hoping to get a bounce back, which they did against the Pittsburgh Penguins, luckily. Pulling off a big 3-2 win. Last minute goal scored by Victor Hedman, taking care of business. 1 minute left to go in the third. Kind of a low slapper from the blue line. Shot the head eyes, kind of got through everyone and through, I think it was Jerry was playing for the Penguins, not Matt Murray for that game. It was a pretty close game. Another game that I got to watch a good chunk of. Both teams playing their style of hockey. Pittsburgh had the lead for a good part of it, and then again, it was your typical third period comeback for the Bolts that we saw at times last year. Paquette getting on the board, and Victor Hedman closing it out with 57 seconds to go. Really thought we were going to overtime. I was getting ready for it, but Hedman on the power play, so Lightning had pretty strong pressure the last, I'd want to say, 4 to 5 minutes of the game, and it was questionable call. I mean, I agree to fit that. Caught some heat on Twitter from a few Pittsburgh fans, as I was jokingly, a few Pittsburgh fans were like, oh, we got robbed. And I'm like, yes, by Vasilevskiy at the end of the game. I agree 100%. So got a little bit of flames on those. With, by the way, Vasi making an amazing save at the 11th hour with no time left. The big debate was that the puck crossed the net, or across the red line. I don't think it did. I mean, it's possible that it did. It's inconclusive either way. So, the call on the ice, no goal, inconclusive. It was no goal. But really a kind of a tough penalty to give out with 2 minutes left to go in the game. Let me look at the penalty summary, because I was really... I don't know if we're going to be able to find who took the penalty at the end of the game for Pittsburgh, but kind of prevented a 2-on-1. I thought it was a semi-decent play to get back on defense. Stick lift, but I think the referee saw it as a hook or interference. Nevertheless, Lightning taking advantage of it and scoring on the power play. As you'll see, 1 for 4 there on the power play. A little bit down on the shots on the face-off percentage, but you'll see 2 games of over 40 shots for the Bolts. That makes me happy, especially with some of the struggles we had on the first the first road trip against Ottawa. Kind of low production on the shot clock. So 48 and 46, I will take that any day. And then limiting Pittsburgh shots up to 39. So a little bit of a kind of an offensive game there. And of course, Vasi standing strong on this one. Yeah, it was Jerry who played for the Penguins with Vasi on the other side. So kind of a nice regulation win there against a good team. Penguins are, they're going to be good. They're likely going to make the playoffs over in the Metropolitan. This may not be the last time we see them, of course. We'll play them 2 more times in the year, but potential playoff candidate or a playoff team we could face especially with us struggling in the standings so far, and Buffalo start getting out to a pretty solid lead. I don't know if I know it's early. I don't want to say that we're out of the race for the division lead or to win the division title, but these points early on count just as much as the points later on. But you don't want to be making up that big of a gap getting into February and March. And then a game that really puzzled me: Nashville Predators on the weekend disrupt the night, get the nice black jerseys on, and you'll see just outshot a little bit. We controlled the face-off circle, but once again, the bugaboo is our penalty kill. 2 out of 5 for the Nashville Predators on their power play. So once again, it problematic for the Bolts, and the money man Roman Josi game tying goal on the power play, and Ellis winning it in overtime on 3-on-3. So I mean, both of their regulation goals were on the power play. Stamkos with his 5th of the year also on the power play. Just, I mean, again, it was a good game. I'm really liking that the Lightning it seems like they're getting their legs. They're starting to play a little bit better, more cohesive. But I think the difference from last year already is we're just not getting the results. I think last year, winning 61, 62 games, I mean, everything went right for the Lightning in terms, minus the Vasilevskiy injury, where Louis Domingue outperformed out of his mind. Everything went right for us last year, and I think this is where we're going to start seeing, where I'm expecting a drop in wins, of course, but we're having a few decisions and dropping a few games that I don't know if I had those calculated. I mean, obviously, this was a toss-up with the Predators, where neck and neck in points and ability. I mean, I think on paper we're a better team, but the way we've been playing and still just warming up, it was a toss-up, and that's essentially what happened with an overtime loss. So 3 out of 6 points on the homestand. I don't know how I feel about that. Usually when you're on the homestand, you like getting 66 to 70 to 75% of those points. You gotta, that's what you should be shooting for. And when you're hitting 50%, especially with a 7 out of 12 on the road stand, which I deemed a success, especially early on, get teammates getting to know each other and play on different lines. But 3 out of 6 is a little bit disappointing, and it kind of puts us in a hole now going on another extended road trip with basically 3 away games against our metropolitan foes up in New York, and then 2 home games in Sweden against the division leading Buffalo Sabres, who hit 20 points already. I think they have the most points in the NHL. So we're going to Sweden coming off of 3 games in 4 nights like they usually do in our Atlantic swing, and we're going across the pond to Sweden to play the best team in the NHL. So we will see how that goes. We'll keep you posted. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, of course. I'm usually live tweeting during most of the games with GIFs and what's been going on. So as we move over to really talk about our penalty kill, and I don't have anything groundbreaking or I don't have a million thoughts on the penalty kill, but what changed? Because last year we were number 1 in the penalty kill. Why our personnel hasn't changed all that much? Again, is this just a question of, wow, things really, really, really went right for us, or have we been kind of sleepwalking through some of these games? Are we already thinking about April? I just don't know. And I'll be quite honest with you, some of these games, especially you go back and think about Ottawa, you're hoping that that's not one that's going to haunt us. As early as it was, I always go back to the year we didn't make the playoffs. Was it 2015, maybe 2014? One of the Cooper years, right, where we didn't make the playoffs. I always think about if we just beat the Arizona Coyotes at home. They found a way to dominate us one game on the home stretch, and lo and behold, we missed the playoffs by 1 point. Had we won that game, we would have been in the playoffs. So you just don't want to leave points on the table. And I'm feeling that we're sleepwalking, thinking that we're entitled to just show up in April and we have a playoff spot. I think we're learning the hard way that we have a target on our back, uh, being that we had 128 points or 130 points or however many points we had last year as a team, and having Kucherov break offensive records. But also, I mean, we just don't seem interested, and I think the team's starting to get it that, hey, wow, we're in fifth place in our division, and if the season ended today, I know we're only 12 games in, we wouldn't even make the playoffs, but I think they're starting to get that urgency together, and I think we're going to be okay. But, you have to question the coaching, and really what kind of grinded my gears, especially against the Avalanche game, in the Avalanche game, was no action taken after a flurry of 3 goals in less than 3 minutes. I mean, no timeout, coach. No, hey, let's send a message and pull Vasilevskiy. Look what you did, team. You got the best goalie in the league pulled. Like, it was just, I don't know if he thought we were gonna 4-1. We have him right where we want him. I don't know. So we'll have to monitor the coaching going so far. I mean, the thoughts are among the Lightning community. It's definitely divided. There's a big fire Cooper camp, and there's a big, hey, let's relax here. It's game 10 or game 12 of the season. So I think for me, I'm going to take a let's wait and see approach to it. I mean, I definitely don't want to overreact, but it's concerning that when you drop from first to 28th in the power play and sub 70% with basically no change of personnel, I mean, what's going on? Are we? I don't know. And I think part of that is Vasi hasn't played well. He's taking a little bit of time to warm up. He's playing pretty well tonight against the Rangers. Some huge saves. But we'll wait and see. We'll see what happens for the road trip, and I'm sure you'll see it on Twitter as well if things are not going well. So let's close out tonight's show with where we are going, and then you see the big cluster of our Atlantic friends or our metropolitan friends. Lightning play 3 and 4 nights, starting with the Rangers, then the Devils, and then the Islanders, who are the best of those that cluster so far, at least from a standings perspective. Rangers really struggling today, and been struggling this whole year. They're not getting the goal scoring. I think King Henry is at the end of his twilight of his career. Though this backup they have, Georgiev, again, playing like a Vezina candidate. I don't want to be that guy, but the Lightning seem to get the best game from every backup goalie. But I digress. Of course, the Devils, I had them towards the bottom of the standings as well. Slight disappointment. I kind of hoped that they could make a jump to the playoffs, especially with securing Nico for a multiple-year contract, I think off his rookie deal. Then heading over to the Islanders, kind of a potential regression there. Robin Leonard moving on. And still got Coach Barry Trotz. But I think the big one here is the big trip to Sweden. Homecoming for Victor Hedman, of course. But the double against the Buffalo Sabres, who have been playing phenomenal hockey for the first month of the season. Leading the NHL in points, 20 points so far. They are playing great team hockey. It's been a long time coming over there. Lots of building through the draft, lots of patience, lots of smart trades, and really depending on some veteran core as well. Really like the work Jeff Skinner's done over there, and of course Eichel doing well over there as well. So we'll keep an eye out on that. I think for episode 7, we'll probably divide the road trip up again. So maybe we'll do our first 3 games, then we'll sum up our home and home, I guess. Or I think it's considered 2 home games for the Lightning against the Buffalo Sabres, and analyze that. So we might try to make it 2 episodes there. just depending on timing, of course. That is it for the Thunderdome Puckcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We talked about it yesterday during the live stream of $10 Sports, but we'll be moving to getting some of these shows on Apple Podcasts as well as Google Podcasts, just so you're able to listen to them in the car. I love sometimes just listening to our own show. It's really hard on YouTube, even if you have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. It's a lot easier if you just have the podcast app and we get that streaming to you. Of course, we always love it if you're watching us on video as well. I think Mike loves wearing his fedora for some reason on our other shows, and we do love having our fancy graphics and our tickers, but we also want to make sure that you guys are able to listen at any time. So we'll get that going in the next few weeks, and we'll let you know when it's ready. That's been it for Thunderdome Puckcast Episode 6. This is your host, Moose. Go Bolts. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the other side of Sweden. Goodbye.